Hey everybody, it's Tizzy and it's Tizzy time. Today I have a very special co-host who's going to talk to you about some amazing things in her industry. We're going to talk about what that looks like. We're going to talk a little bit about work-life balance. But before I give all the spoils away to our conversation, I would love to allow my co-host to introduce herself, give a little bit about what she does, and yeah, so, Rod, thank you for joining us on the Shanty podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that we came across each other on Threads. Yeah, a little bit about me. I get so nervous when I introduce myself. I've been in the industry for 10 years. I'm on the west coast of Canada, so we get a little bit of a crossover because we have a lot of couples that come from the States to come get married here. And I focus on inclusive, intentional, sustainable weddings, and we're starting to foray into events. And I'm really excited because we've got some really fun, sustainable events that are coming up next year. I can't say too much about it right now, but soon.
That sounds amazing. In Canada, wow, I love Canada. Never been, but I've always wanted to go. One of my favorite actors is from Canada, Jim Carrey.
I thought
But
you were going to say Ryan Reynolds.
he's second. I was gonna say, I know everybody expects me to say Ryan Reynolds, so I love Ryan Reynolds too. Just Friends was literally one of my favorite movies of all time. And I consider it a Christmas movie, but a lot of people don't. So let's dive right into a few questions or a few topics. So what's one thing, Rad, that people feel is an overshot at a wedding? Like maybe it could be a tradition, it could be a dress color, it could be a hairstyle that you feel is not an overshot. It's just something that may be what the bride wants or the groom wants. What's one common misconception about a wedding tradition that you think should be put to rest?
Okay, well, I'm gonna start with the wedding tradition that I think should just go away, and that's the
Yes,
bouquet
okay.
and garter toss. But one that I think that's like really beautiful is the first dance and the parent dances. Like, obviously, if you do like the whole song, like people can get like kind of bored and you start losing people. But I think it's a really sweet moment, especially if you see like a couple bring in, like, say if they've got like kids and they bring the kids into like the first dance. Like it's like a kind of like signifying a coming together. And I think that we should do those more often.
Yeah, I love that tradition. When my parents got married, I was four, so I love that they brought me into the first dance. Me as a 4-year-old, I felt very excluded because it's a wedding, it's about mom and dad. So I love that you said like that's a tradition that I believe should still be ongoing. Because when we hear of like coming together and weddings, you're right, those are two things you think of, two families bridging the gap. So to see that in actuality, I think it's a beautiful thing too. As far as that goes with the first dance, do you feel like there's anything that today's generation or those who are planning weddings during this time can institute that may not have to deal with traditional norms? Or do you feel like, it's pretty self-standard? So, like, I know TikTok is a big thing. Is that something you suggest, like incorporating some TikTok, I guess, for accounts? Or would you prefer it be something very like traditional, old school music, 5 minutes for them? Or is it something you think the crowd should be included in as well?
I think you can do whatever you want with it. Like we've had people do like a Prince flash mob as part of their first dance. They like
I love that.
incorporated it halfway through. Yeah, it was fantastic. And like I also just saw this. I don't know where in the world this was, but somebody incorporated like the Miss Congeniality like intro for like
No,
their wedding party into like their first dance. It looked so fun. And
I
I just
love
love that people are
that.
getting creative with it. Like, you don't have to stick to tradition. Like, if you want to, sure. But, like, there's so many ways to put your own twist on it.
I love that. And I love Miss Congeniality. So after, I'm definitely going to have to search that up. I'd actually seen a photographer do something new and traditional where I'm sure you've seen it, but just going through a crowd and having those at the wedding involve themselves. And then, of course, the last shot was the bride and groom kissing, but it like moved through the crowd. And the last shot was the bride and the groom. And I just thought that was beautiful. But that kind of piggybacks me to my next question. What are your top five favorite things? Oh, sorry, let me say this. What is the top five things you would tell someone, or any set of advice you would tell someone who may be planning a wedding or in that element of just being engaged? what would the next steps what are some next steps you would tell them in that aspiration of wedding preparation?
Oh my gosh. So, Tizzy, I'll tell you, I have people who contact me and they're like, I just got engaged. I need to start planning my wedding right now. And I'm like, maybe take a minute. Like, just, take a breath, enjoy it. And, kind of like, it's like, people are probably still saying congratulations. You're still in that like newly engaged glow. I think like it's just really important to like just be in the moment because like when are you going to get engaged again? Unless you're Elizabeth Taylor. But
Very true. She had more
yeah,
than enough time. I'm sure by like the
yeah.
fourth engagement, she's like, my seventh engagement, I'm gonna just go all out.
I mean, like, I think that's really, really important. And I also think it's really important to like get clear on the why. Why are you throwing a wedding? Why are you wanting to like have a sit down dinner? Like, what do you want it to look like? What do you want it to feel like? Because I think if people get like caught up in like TikTok and Pinterest and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to have like this multi-layered place setting or I have to have this huge wedding with all of the people I've ever met. So it kind of gets into like, yeah, it gets into like this thing of like, okay, can you afford it? Do you want it? Do you not want it?
I love the way that you said that too, because even, like traditions, like I think it's something old, something new, and something blue, if I'm not wrong, or am
And
I
there's
like,
something borrowed in there too.
okay, so see,
Yeah.
I don't even know. And it's crazy because that's a tradition I've been seeing over the past 5 to 7 years. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like me, well, it possibly was a thing. I was just a young girl going to weddings and probably didn't know. But to see so many people put their spin on it too, like their blue is like a jean jacket or a Tiffany box or something of that element. So it's just so interesting for you to say, like, don't have the wedding for others, have the wedding for yourself ultimately, and make sure you're not overdoing it. And that's the first tradition I thought of as far as like something that's stigmatized a lot more now than previously. And then I'm not even going to talk about the bachelorette parties. Like its own separate entity of planning nowadays too. It's like, oh man, I remember a bachelor party was 1 day or a couple hours or a dinner for ladies. It was like this sit down. Now it's like we're going out of town, we're matching, or we're dressing up as the older ladies and we're bar hopping. So I think it's amazing at how the shift is moving, but it also worries me for when I'm getting married, Rad, and I'm like, okay, I have to put money towards this and money towards this and money towards that. Kind of similar to what gender reveals are now in like the baby shower industry. And it's just like, man, when I get married, is there going to be a step before the bridal party and after the engagement, like a parents' dinner or something? So I'm like, let me prepare my pockets.
I know it's like becoming a huge multi-day event, and it's usually just was like Indian weddings that were the multi-day event, and now
Right.
it's yeah. And the thing is, like I know you said earlier, like plan the wedding for you and not for others. I do, to an extent, think that we should plan the wedding for others, just like for comfortability and like making sure everyone's included. In terms of like, yeah, it still comes back to like, why do you want to do this? What is motivating you, and do you want to have that multi-day event? Or do you not, do you just want to go alone?
Right. And that's
Yeah,
always an option too.
that is
Almost
always an
forgot about that
option.
option.
Yeah. And
Vegas
I,
will always be there.
exactly. And I mean, I love now too that like people are not also putting themselves in that pigeonhole of we need to have a wedding party. They're just,
Yes,
yeah.
very
So like
true. I
that's
like
like
that as
really
well.
refreshing. And it's kind of nice because then, you don't hurt anyone's feelings. You don't have to worry about offending somebody. Like maybe somebody can't afford all of the things. Like so like those conversations don't need to happen. And then everyone can just come and be like a guest and then just enjoy the day with you.
And I love that. And that like transitions me to my next question too. Like, what is your favorite wedding theme right now? Is it the traditional, of course, long white dress, veil, mother of the bride, of course, father of the groom or the bride, get to go forward and ultimately do that? Or would you go forward and say, like, I love the new scope of weddings. I love that the bride is not wearing a traditional white dress. I love that, the dog is the ring bearer. I love that, there's a flower guy or a flower man instead of a flower girl. Are you liking the shift or are you like stuck to like I love to plan just traditional. I love to just see traditional. Or, what's your your opinion on the shift in the wedding industry?
I really like the shift. I really like that people are challenging the wedding industry to not be traditional anymore. And they're like really honing in on what's important to them and like including the people that they want to include. And and I think that it's been a long time coming because I've talked to so many people, like especially in the queer community, that have said that they feel left behind. Or like I've even had people who are like, I don't look like the models, and they're like putting all this pressure on themselves to like lose weight. And I'm like, this person that you're marrying has already asked you to marry them looking like you look now. So why are you putting this pressure on yourself? And like everyone around you loves you the way that you are too. So like I'm really glad to see that people are going away from like the normal that or the traditional and making their own way.
I love how you said like ultimately you're there for you. Like it's your partner who you're marrying. You're not marrying, Instagram or TikTok or trying to be the next viral look for a wedding. It actually reminds me of, even a shift in wedding dress. I remember wedding dresses were the biggest you can get, the floofiest you can get, the longest train you can get. And now it's like the most form fitting, the most decorative, or, the most natural looking against your skin with, of course, a lace bodice. So makes me pose the question when I get married, what would that look like? Will that look like that big burly dresses again? Will it look like that huge veil? Or will I, of course, want the upscale wedding where I have a table for 500 and we're just all sitting amongst each other? It's just like so much to consider. So I have to ask Rad, how do you do it as not only a wedding planner, but an event planner? How do you take the stress off the bride or take the stress off the person planning the wedding? Because as you can see, I was just overwhelmed and I'm nowhere near the wedding process. So, how do you do it? Like, please tell me the magic.
We start with likes and dislikes. So you keep it really simple. And I ask about, what their home looks like, what they do on a daily basis, what date nights look like. I even talk about, have you been to weddings? What did you like? What did you not like? And we kind of just like get into just figuring out what the root of everything is and make that foundation, because like really if once we have like the roots all set, that tree can grow and we can have a beautiful wedding, and we don't have to like keep questioning like, hey, why are we getting this four-piece quartet when we just wanted it to be a simple wedding, and or like, why are we looking at DJs now instead of when we just wanted a band? So all of those questions become like really key to figuring out what we want, and then the planning gets so much easier. And I get to take the stress off because I've been doing it for so long now, and it's really nice to be able to say, hey, from experience, like maybe this flow doesn't work, but how about we try this flow instead? Like a really good example of that is I had this awesome couple from a couple years ago. So yeah, it was a couple years ago now. And they wanted to have a champagne toast, but they also wanted to have a group photo, and they wanted everyone to be on the dance floor. So it was like, okay, there's a lot of like moving pieces, and we've got, your first dance happening, and you want the champagne being passed, and then guests are going to be distracted by the champagne getting passed. So like, how do we like work this out so everyone's happy? So we came to like a medium where like the champagne got passed much earlier in the day, and then we had two group photos, one after the ceremony, one on the dance floor, and then the music kicked off right away, so we got everyone on the dance floor without glasses in their hands.
So many moving parts, like you said, but a person wouldn't think that. A bride would just be like, I need it done. But you are, for lack of a better term, the logical person out of all of the things. And you're like, hey, like champagne, distracted people, collisions, spill champagne, God forbid, ruined dresses and dirty feet. So it's
Yeah,
just so crazy how you need that logical person. And even if it doesn't sound like what you're asking for is so illogical, but it's like you need that person there to talk those moving
I
parts.
call it is like I basically call it like the magic wand effect. Is like people start seeing all this stuff, and they're like they forget about like, oh wait, it doesn't just like appear in, there's people that make it happen, and like you start like being like thinking about all of like the what you want it to look like and feel like, and then those things kind of get missed. So that's why it's really important to work with somebody who is logical, like me.
Yes, thank God. I always tell people like wedding planners, event planners, anyone dealing with the high stress of someone who is either pregnant, about to get married, about to celebrate a child's birthday, whatever have you, I give them a cape. Those are the real supermen because to successfully put on an event and make sure every moving part is moving the way it's supposed to, especially as something as huge and celebratory as a wedding or a baby shower or a birthday party, it's like, wow, like, So I have to ask, what would be harder for you as a planner? Planning something that's happening overseas or a destination wedding, for example, or a wedding that's 250 plus guests, a 10 plus wedding party, and of course, all the major parts, live band, DJ, bar, etc. What do you think would be harder?
So I actually have done both.
I figured. I was like, I know I'm speaking to an industry leader right now. She's going to be like, go for a piece of cake.
Actually, I found that having the wedding overseas was like a little bit harder just
Really?
because you're not like, you can't like be there and be in person and see
Right.
everything yourself. Like, you have to just like, leave it up to like the wedding gods and just be like, it's gonna all work out. And the people on the other side, they know what they're doing, and I know what I'm doing, and everyone knows what they're doing.
But you know what's so funny? Me personally, and as you can see, I'm not an industry leader. I would think that the wedding overseas would be a lot easier because it's like, oh, I can just stay an extra 2 weeks. My honeymoon can be here too. But now hearing, like, hey, we can't be there every step of the way. We're not sure, say, for example, what the venue looks like or what it's going to look like when we actually put that theory into practice. So it's actually refreshing to hear because I was like, I'm going to do a destination wedding because it's going to be super simple. I just have to be there. I just have to enjoy the views. And it's like, I never thought of the concept of it potentially being a lot harder to execute than that of a wedding that's more so local or domestic. So, wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Makes me rethink.
you can do a destination wedding and do like, the packages that the resorts offer and not really like go too far off from the plan. But usually when I'm working with a couple that's going with like a resort wedding, they have a lot of customization that they want to do. And I'm like lugging suitcases with like fake eucalyptus and fake candles from Canada. So,
On a
you
plane
know,
with huge
on a
bags. Like,
plane. Yeah, and
why do you have
hoping that
90
like
candles?
actually, funny story, when that happened, I got like pulled aside by like Mexican security at the airport, and they wanted
Oh
to like
no.
know if the eucalyptus was real, and I'm like, it's not real. I don't know the Spanish word for it, but it's not real.
Fake. I think that's so funny. And to say Mexico, because I love that you said Mexico because I know that's a very big area for a destination wedding. I actually had a friend who just got married in Tulum, and I'm just like, wow, like, I think that's great, like to just go and be like, hey, I'm gonna go get married in this beautiful exotic place. I might stay an additional 2 weeks. Don't worry about me. So I think that's amazing. Like, what does the inclusivity or what does the wedding industry look like as far as like women of color? As far as just going forward and being ultimately women in general, and what that looks like, because I know like planning and wedding planning back in the day was very heavily male populated, as you can see in the wedding planner. But yeah, Rad, let me know about that. What does that look like?
So over here in this area, anyways, it's very female based.
Oh, that's
There's
good.
occasionally, yeah, there's occasionally some men in the industry. Like we've got an amazing florist that is like it's a family business actually. Like I think his dad and his grandfather actually ran the business beforehand.
Wow, so it's in the
Yeah,
family. That's amazing.
yeah. So we definitely don't have as many men in the industry. If there are men in the industry, they're usually DJs, I've noticed, interestingly
Oh
enough,
yeah.
or they're like in like the rental field, or they're like supporting people, like their partners. Like my husband, for example, he helps a lot, and I know a lot of other people have the same situation. I will tell you though, like I have been like one of two POCs in the industry for like the last 10 years, I want to say, 8 years maybe. Um, And but recently I'm seeing there's a lot more people that are coming in that are POC, and I'm so excited. And I'm even like helping one of them who's in her first year get like to where she wants to be.
I
And
love
I'm
that. So
really,
like
yeah.
mentorship. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm
that's
really excited
amazing.
about it. And I'm really excited to see that like there's more people coming in. But she did say something interesting to me. She said, sometimes it's hard not to feel like the help when you're the only one
Right.
on the
Definitely
team.
understand that.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that explains so much of like how I've been feeling being the only person, because like people would come up to like my husband for example and think that he was the owner and he was the coordinator instead of like assuming it was me. So yeah, things like that, like just like the little microaggressions that happen, right, that some people see, but then like you find you're convincing other people that it actually happened. um
Right. Of
yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I'm really happy that there's more people in the industry that are coming in through that feel like they like this is somewhere that they can be. And I mean, it's been a long, long time coming. And I mean, like even like the wedding magazines and stuff, they've got a lot of work to do too, because you know, there's couples of all sorts, and if people are saying we want to be represented, not only on the magazines, but also behind the scenes too. So we're working with a lot of people who have made that a priority to make sure that their wedding vendor team is not necessarily just being booked because like they're the best and the easiest one to like book, but like we're actually taking the time to like find somebody who's really good at what they do and then is also part of the BIPOC community.
I love that you said that. So with that, that's a great segue into what I'm going to ask next. What's one thing you would either change or shift within the industry um, currently? What's one thing you would change or shift? And is it something that would aid 15 years from now, or is this something that can aid not only right at the moment, but something that can ultimately, hopefully, instill a change?
I think that, and this is the thing, this is really hard to say this because money comes into play, but I do think that it's really important for people to be booking vendors based on values as well
Understood.
as like their other points of like, budget, what the person can do for them if they fit like the style that they're going for. But I think the values based is something that we're seeing come in, I guess, with, is it Gen Z? Is that the
Yes,
generation
that
that's
would
getting
yes.
married now? Yeah.
Yes, that's my generation. We're getting married
Yeah.
now. Still can't believe we're not the generation that's like graduating college because the pandemic and everything. Like in my mind, I'm still 24, but yeah, we're climbing that ladder. We're getting up there.
Yeah. And I mean, like, so I'm considered an elder millennial because of Liza Schlesinger coining that term.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so
They
like,
call you guys, what is it, zillennials with an X or like,
yeah, maybe
yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm really, really happy that like, it's starting with Gen Z and I'm seeing like this trickle down effect of like, it's going out to like all of the other, older people, as well as the younger generation too. So that like we're starting to have these value based conversations and starting to say like, okay, what does this person stand for besides like doing a great job at whatever their part in the wedding industry is.
That a lot, and I feel like that's important. I also feel like that's values we're shifting as American people and people in general within society. Just shifting towards picking someone that aligns. Like I feel like the human connection is healing, and we are growing back in that place where we're trusting of others. We're able to really just mesh naturally through conversation and just natural collaboration. So I love that you said like people are starting to see it and kind of like instill that into the older generation as well. And before we jump into work life balance and talking about what that looks like, I have to ask you, because this has been a debate heavily all over on the socials, so I need to know from an industry expert, what do you think? So do you believe that photographers or videographers, and I know you heard this, do you believe they should be fed at the wedding even if they're also getting paid? Or do you believe like, hey, you're getting paid, if we offer you a plate, absolutely, but you shouldn't expect a plate? What's your feedback or opinion, Rad? What are we thinking?
I want everyone to be fed at the wedding, and I want them to eat what the guests are eating.
I love that. I agree, by the way. I feel like you should be feeding someone who's going to be taking photos of the most important time of your life. Who knows that nourishment might have him out here taking photos like, Picasso painted or, Van Gogh painted, and now you're not feeding him, and he's just like, not even caring because at the end of the day, he gets paid. But I'm glad you said that. Yes, feed your
Yeah, and
photographer and videographer.
yeah, and I mean like feed everyone. Like everyone who's
Okay.
there like for like more than 3 hours and is like when the appetizers are getting passed and stuff. Like I'm talking about like our live musicians, we make sure that they get like some light appies or like a sandwich or something because like they're not staying for dinner, but they're there for 3 hours and they need a break. And I also am like a really big proponent of people getting like the vendors getting fed in the same room as the guests too, because then we see like what's going on. If they're like, we can read the room, we can make sure, if something needs to happen, if, the couple has a request all of a sudden or someone has like a surprise speech, then like we can be ready and prepared for that. Um, and also, like, I'd hate to see like a vendor leave and then this like really special moment get missed.
What does an average day look like for you? Because we are jumping into discussing work-life balance. So my question is, what does a traditional day look like for you and what that looks like in your industry?
So I used to have like the worst work-life balance, like emails at like 1 in the morning, like it was
Me.
terrible.
Me
But like
right now.
yeah, and I started realizing though, is like me doing that was setting the expectation that I was going to be like awake at every morning at 1 a.m. And that people were like, they were at, but they'd be expecting a response from me. So I like really honed it back. And now like I'm really thankful I have daycare. I've had my toddler hanging out with me for the last 3 years while I've been working.
Well, it
And
sounds like you have a little junior wedding planner in the scope. I'm
I
afraid for
mean,
them when they get older.
he's a little demanding already, so
He's got the skill.
yeah.
He's like, I will
Um,
not deal with any bridezillas
he's like, this is not the right temperature
at all. Like, let's
at
let's
all.
go back to
Send
the
it back to
drawing
the
board.
kitchen.
Yes.
Yeah, so I started actually calling it a work-life juggle more so because I started realizing that some days like the priorities change. So like when I still had my son at home, it would be like, he's not feeling well. I'm gonna try to like take care of him more than like doing my work. So it was kind of like a priority shift that happened. But like now that he's in daycare, it's really nice because I can focus like my mornings on say like emails or like I can meet with like a new vendor for coffee. And then in the afternoons, I can do things like this, like talk to you. I can work on my social media. I can work on like some continuing education, and then I can have meetings in the afternoon when my husband's home, and we can like just he can take care of our son, and then I can like be on the meeting. But then I do have like a hard stop. I've made it so that like our meetings will end at 6 o'clock, and it's an exception basis now where like if I to have a meeting at like 8:30 because that's usually because I have another vendor that has kids that's like I can do a meeting at 8:30 with your couple and I'm like okay sure we'll do it. But for the most part I try to keep it contained. I try to like act like somebody I'm working for somebody else and I have like a set schedule.
How you said like by 6, please do not contact me. I love family time. It's funny you mentioned that I work on the scope within creative. So doing anything for people that may need social media deliverables, event management, meaning like hosting, things like that, or if they need any deliverables for an event. One of my peers had asked me one time, like, what time are you going to bed, Tizzy? Because I'm going to bed at like 1, 2 in the morning. I said, oh no, girl, my phone is face down by 8 o'clock. I'm watching a good movie, and before bed, if I am picking up my phone, it's to read a verse in the Bible or it's to see what my plans are, check off little to-do lists. So I love that you said like, hey, like it's a work-life juggle. And I love that you explain like what that looks like because a lot of people feel like because you're an entrepreneur or because you work for yourself, you have to be in business till 12 at night. It's great that that's an option, but a lot of us entrepreneurs love our sleep. We want to be in bed by 9. We want to have some sense of normalcy. Tomorrow's another day. So I love that you have that work life juggle that's allowing you not only to learn more about your industry, but to flourish in your industry, but also that time home with your family, that time home to say, for example, go out and get a cup of ice cream. I think that's very important within what anybody does, but most importantly, those in, like I said, the event industry, that communication industry. I mean, like, could be a lot for us.
Here, like our wedding season has been extending and extending. So like it runs like from April to November now because the weather is so mild and like people don't mind a little bit of rain. So like we're like full on, I would say from like June, July, August, and sometimes in September. So some of that gets thrown out the window. Like the location got changed at the last minute, and I'm like 9 o'clock at night on the phone with them trying to figure it out. So like, things like that
Of
do
course.
happen. It's not an everyday occurrence. And I feel like too, me being an introverted extrovert, I need that time. I
Me.
need that time, like you said, like with the movie and like, have your feet up. I'm like, I need to like not talk to people and recharge.
Literally me, Rad. I'm like, sometimes I know I can be super loquacious. I can be the girl that's in a room smiling and kikiing with everybody, but sometimes I go nonverbal and I just want to like immerse myself in a TikTok to laugh. Maybe I want to immerse myself in a threads post or, just brainstorm for what I'm doing with one of my other companies. And it's just like, I don't get that. I don't even want to pick up the phone for my friends. I don't know what I would do if I had someone like, Mommy, because I think I'd just be like, I definitely have to get off the phone by 5, not even 6, 5. Leave me alone. I'm a mom to a toddler at that. So honestly, Rad, that's amazing that you can just have that balance. And I love that, your son has some immersion into that industry as well, because that's something he can grow up and love too, and that's introducing him to something that's not your standard, of course, lawyer, doctor, you know, city job. Because, I grew up in the inner city and everybody's thing was like, I'm going to be a basketball player, I'm going to be in music, or, of course, the 5 standard jobs, a doctor, a lawyer. So I love that we're in fields where our creativity shines and we can bring that to other people.
Yeah, and I was thinking the other day, I was like, there's so many careers now that we had no
Yes,
idea existed. Like,
yes.
I'm pretty sure you can legitimately be a rocket scientist now.
My friend is literally a rocket scientist.
There we
She
go.
just graduated from LXU, and when she told me she was studying rocket science, I was like, "Girl, get out of here! You're not a rocket scientist. Like that's something we heard in cartoons." And she's like, "No, I'm literally a rocket scientist." And she graduated with her doctorate just this past August. So yeah, I'm like, there's so many opportunities that you thought were fictional that are real things. I mean, you have armed jewelry security guards, which I never knew was a thing. I'm sure you have. But just seeing that in Ocean's 8 with Sandra Bullock, like a man being paid maybe like 90,000 for the night to make sure this necklace doesn't leave this neck. So I think it's great that we're expanding, in the areas of trades, creativity. I mean, streaming is a thing, Rad. You can get online, put a camera in front of your face and just talk for hours at end and get paid for it. So I mean, who knows what that'll look like 5 years from now? Somebody might be able to sleep all day and get paid. I hope they should send me the application though, but you know,
You'd be great at it.
I think so for sure. Like I think I would be the best of the best. I think I would be like employee of the year. I want to ask some myths or misconceptions that you feel are like myths. Like what are some things you would tell brides to be, grooms to be, people getting married? Like do not listen to them. That is a myth.
Oh gosh, okay. There's so many things now because like everybody who's planning their wedding thinks that they know everything about weddings, right? And
Oh,
they're
of
putting it on
course.
TikTok, and I'm like,
TikTok
it's
is who's
great.
telling them. TikTok is
Yeah.
like, you have $80,000, we can throw $1 million wedding, or you have $5,
Yeah.
we can make this wedding look like a $10,000 wedding. So,
Thing is I say like don't be afraid of fake flowers. There's some fake flowers out there that are gorgeous. Like the silk fake flowers. We've actually had a florist even use them and like people couldn't tell at all.
I love that you said that. It doesn't have to be fresh flowers.
No, and like you can use a combination, and the nice thing is that you can sometimes rent those flowers, like we did from the florist. There's always like Facebook Marketplace. People always have that kind of stuff on hand, right? So I think that's a huge one because like no one's going to be looking at your flowers that closely. So we give the rented flowers back, but then we personally will take the flowers to a senior's home and then they like the seniors home staff will put them in vases and make everyone's week happy. Well,
I
happier.
love that. I'm sure flowers brighten up their day as well. I think that's amazing. But the fake flower thing, I'm literally still thinking about it. I'm like, I might just do fake flowers because I'm not a big flower fan, Rad. I could care less about flowers. Like my bouquet can be like a 12-piece swing. It can be a 12-piece sneaker, like maybe some candy. You know how they have the money bouquet? We can
Oh my
even do
gosh,
that.
yes. I was gonna say too, we had somebody do like a brooch bouquet. It
Ooh,
was
so all
really
different types of
heavy.
brooches? I
Yeah,
can
all
only
different types of brooches.
imagine.
It was really heavy but gorgeous, and it wasn't big. They kept it small.
What's one piece of advice you would tell a bride either before the wedding, during the wedding, or after the wedding? What are your three key pieces of advice for before the wedding, during the wedding, and after the wedding? And it could be to the bride, to the groom, to whoever is planning a wedding. What would be your before, during, and after advice?
Okay, I would say before, step away from Pinterest. Like, get
Oh my
away from
God, Rad, did
Pinterest.
you just call me out? I am obsessed with Pinterest.
I mean, like, do your like preliminary
Step back.
pinning, but then like step back and then, talk to the florist or your photographer or whoever it is that you're like looking at all these photos because then they can tell you what the price tag is going to be. Because the thing is that Pinterest is not a shopping cart. You have no idea what a lot of those things cost.
So
And a lot of the
true.
times it's styled shoots or it's like people who have like really intimate weddings and didn't have like they had like 20 guests, so they like were able to spend a little bit more on things like flowers. So yeah, that kind of is one thing. And then during, I say like still have date nights. Like have some time where you don't talk about the wedding. And I mean, like that's important for everyone. It's even important for me. Like, I need to stop talking about weddings sometimes. And the date nights are really nice because like you can use that to like reconnect and kind of like get back to regular life because you have to remember that there's not going to be a wedding to plan after your wedding day. That's the other thing. And then my advice for after actually is to have something else to look forward to so those wedding blues don't kick in. So like if it's not the honeymoon right away, like book yourself like a couple of days somewhere quiet so you can just chill and like decompress. Or like, book yourself like something like a cooking class or like still like take those dance classes, like do something that you still can look forward to like once a week, once a month, whatever it is, because that'll keep everything still like fresh and you still will have like some elements that you're planning then.
So the advice is one, stay off Pinterest. To the ladies out there, get off that app. Two, always make sure you're still courting and you're still dating and you're separating yourself from the wedding. And then third would be, of course, to make sure you're doing something after the wedding. Make sure you're still invoking that love and that romance because, wedding blues could set in. And, say the honeymoon is not right away. You can take little trips, do a staycation, a daycation. There's so many areas. But see, Rad, if they're not on Pinterest, they can't find those little ideas for staycation. So they have to get on the Pinterest.
That's what
It's true.
Instagram's for.
And TikTok, right? I love that. That's great advice. Like those are key tips I'm going to take away. Every woman when she's a little girl wants to have a wedding, wants to have kids. I mean, like that's the stigma for us. And to just like see that there's so many ways you don't have to get caught up in the notions of planning or the notions of what weddings are. I love that because a lot of people nowadays can be getting married for that, the wedding, versus of course the marriage. So, what tips would you give to those people who may need some advice into marriage?
I mean, I'm not an expert when it comes to that, but I feel like what I've learned over the last little while is like communication is key. I sometimes am guilty of having those like half a conversation in my head and then the rest of it out loud. So yeah, I've definitely learned, gotta like back up a couple of steps and make sure I said it out loud. I also think like it's really, really important to remember that you're on the same team. Kids happen, all that stuff. And like we have like a little like code word now that we're like, okay, our son's becoming a little bit too much for one of us. Like the other person's gonna take over. Yeah. And I mean like it's good to have like a timeout too. Like even if like
Right,
in like a marriage, like you don't have to like constantly do everything all together at the same time. It's
right.
good to like have like a little bit of time for yourself because otherwise like how are you gonna get to like figuring out how things are working personally and together.
And I think, honestly, Rad, you gave so much sound advice. Me personally, I'm super excited about that process in girlhood where I'm getting married and planning. But you actually took a lot of the stress away because just giving that advice, a lot of women don't know this. I mean, even women who are currently married, I'm sure the wedding planning and what next steps have put them through, honestly, the strain of it all. So to get this sound advice and then from such a amazing industry leader, I think that's great. I'm just saying it from now, 2028, I'm planning. Just expect my email, please. I'm just gonna speak it, and I would like my destination wedding in the Maldives. So I'm putting you to the task, Rad.
Put you in the calendar,
Please,
like right
just
now.
just put me in, book me from now because look, I know you're gonna be super busy because everybody's gonna see this interview. I'm like, I love her, I want to book her, and I'm like, no, 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 this is my wedding planner. Like, book after 2028. Thank you so much, Rad. Like, I had such an amazing conversation with you. Thank you so much for talking to me, not only about the industry, but what inclusivity looks like in your industry and what work-life balance looks like. Of course, throwing out the stigma to the myths, also giving, the brides to be, grooms to be, families to be merge advice on what, marriage and a wedding can look like. And of course, talking about your upcoming news. I can't wait for that. And any more news or next steps within that. So I will be inviting you back on when we have that announcement because I feel like that's something we definitely have to get in depth and talk about. But I thank you so much for jumping on. Thank you so much for talking to me. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off? Oh, please mention where people can find you as well and anything about yourself that you feel is important.
I really enjoyed our conversation, and
Likewise.
I'm so glad, like I said, that we found each other.
I know.
And yeah, and now I'm gonna have to come to Brooklyn.
No, literally, if you do, I will take you out a beautiful day. We'll have a time. We'll go to LMB, which is like the best pizza in Brooklyn. I know everybody's like, oh my gosh, Chicago
Mm.
lies. New York has the best pizza, the best bagels. We're literally just gonna eat all day and be big bags, but it'll be worth
Oh
it
my
because
gosh,
we'll
I
be
love
walking
it.
around the city, get our steps in. But when you are ever in Brooklyn, I would love to meet up and I'll take you everywhere. Of course, not where the tourists go because no, I'm a local, but we'll get some great local eats and some sights, and we'll have such a great time. You'll love it.
That sounds fantastic. And yeah, in terms of where to find me, I'm on Instagram, Rad Occasions. I like hang out there a lot more than I do on TikTok. I actually don't even have a TikTok account.
Oh my
I'm
gosh, no.
embarrassed.
Rad, you have to get on there, even if you're not posting, because I understand like TikTok is so much. Like if I didn't jump in when I did, I probably would have never been so active. But it's such a great app, very similar to Threads to grow on. And I think like as well, like you would bring so much to the app as far as like new and noteworthy things, industry advice, industry led advice, and then of course just being an industry expert and showing the new girlies who think they can just jump into the field that it's not as easy as they think.
Okay, maybe I'll check it out. Maybe I'll
She's like,
try.
maybe I'll
Just a little
see.
bit.
Definitely. Very similar to Pinterest, of course, just the visual aid alongside. You got your videos, your little jokes. But it's a pretty good platform once you get
Yeah.
over the whole trolling element of it.
Yeah, and then other than that, I actually have my own podcast. It's on hiatus.
Okay.
Um, because having a toddler.
Life, trust
But
me, I get
yeah.
it.
But it's called That's Rad Podcast.
I love that.
And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to bring it back next year, but we will see.
I am super excited. It is on hiatus, you said, but I'm pretty sure there's episodes out there. So if you guys want to listen to the That's Rad podcast, go check it out. I'm sure she's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'm definitely going to go check it out. I love the double entendre. Oh, well, technically it's a triple entendre because your name, your
Yes.
business, and your personality trait.
Yeah.
So guys, go check it out as well. And if you need any expert advice, anything you want to ask Rad, learn more about what the wedding planning I guess checklist looks like, go follow Rad at Rad Occasions. I mean, she has some amazing stuff up there. She has such a passion behind it. So I love that. But thank you so much, Rad. I appreciate you for jumping on, for talking to me today, and, just talking more about what it is you do. I definitely hope we connect again. Thank you so much for reaching out via Threads. I'm so happy that we were able to talk. I mean, this is one of my favorite conversations so far, supernatural.
I'm really excited to have this conversation again when I have my exciting news.
Yes, definitely. And we definitely will be having you back here to discuss that news because I want to know and I definitely want the audience to know. And I think it's great. So thank you so much, Rad. I appreciate it.